Okay, good evening. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting of the City of Bloomington Township to order. If everyone could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Okay, Madam Clerk, how are we going to do this? Are we roll call? No, we're just punching?
We'll just do roll call for the
Roll call?
attendance.
Okay, all right. Would you go ahead and please call the roll?
Yes, Board Member Matthey,
Here.
Board Member Bolin. Here. Trustee Montney,
Here.
Trustee Emig, like my
Here.
name changes today, sorry.
Yeah.
Trustee Becker,
Here.
Trustee Carrillo,
Here.
Trustee Ward,
Here.
Trustee Crable,
Here.
Trustee Crumpler,
Here.
and Trustee Millawamble.
Here. So as I understand it, we are doing electronic voting tonight, right? So do you want to, before we move into the next item, since we're going to vote electronically, do you want to maybe give everybody a quick overview of what we're doing, what they need to do
Yeah,
if
so-
everybody's ready?
Then you'll have an explanation for why I started off such a mess, naming people different things, using different titles, just teasing. So just as you said, Trustee Millawamble, we are rolling out an electronic voting system that is similar to what we used at City Hall. And we'll also use this later in the council meeting as well. But everyone is equipped on their device to vote. And so what we'll do is when you're ready, you'll do your same motion second. When you call the vote, everyone will look at their device, vote there. And then once all the votes are in, Phil will, in the back with IT, will display that publicly. If there's no's or nays at your direction, I will call those out. And then the next, we'll move on to the next item and roll similarly to what we did before. Thank
Okay.
you.
Sounds very good. Perfect. So the next item on the agenda then is the consent agenda. Is there any item that any member of the board would like to remove? If none, can I get a motion?
I'll make that motion to approve.
Okay, thank you. Motion by trustee Bolin. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by trustee Matthey. You may go ahead and vote. This feels like riding my bike with training wheels.
Is it working?
Donna, yours is not.
I hit yes.
Mm,
Oh, I had to refresh. Oh,
It just
here?
wasn't appearing right.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Awesome. And you go ahead and read them, right?
So we
Right.
don't need to read them. It was just if there would be no's or nays, we would read those.
Oh, okay.
And it carried 9-0.
I don't have mine pulled up. Should I? No?
No, you're okay.
Just-
I
okay.
think we're just fine to keep going.
Yeah.
Is it not? Yep. So we should have actually set you up because you have a vote in this, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we didn't do that. That's our fault. So would you like to just announce what your vote would be so that we can move forward?
A lot of suspense, yes.
Thank you. So the no nays to
Okay,
announce.
all right, awesome. Okay, next item on the agenda is a presentation of audit report for fiscal year 2021 by Rick Phillips.
Correct, but he is not here today. Can you hear me all right?
Sure.
Okay. He is ill today, so
Oh.
wasn't unable to make it.
Sorry to hear that.
But he did report no internal controls
Okay,
issues at
Okay.
all. And so everything went smoothly and without a hitch.
okay. And we're placing this on file so people can review it if they'd like for about a month, right?
Correct.
Until the next
Mhm.
meeting. Okay. Do we need a motion on this? Yeah, right, okay.
Yes,
So can I have a motion? And I'm looking right at Donna.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
It's just to be, it's to be accepted.
yeah, just to be accepted, yes. So motion by trustee Boland and looks like a second by trustee Mutney. Okay. You may go ahead and vote.
and if you want to go ahead and vote
Yes.
as well, that would be
Yes.
great. And trustee Grable, your vote is not coming through. If you need to refresh and try again, sorry.
Okay. The item passes. There are no nays to announce. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is bid for parking lot and curb ramps. And the recommendation is that the bid be awarded to Stark Excavating in the amount of $181,584. And the supervisor and township clerk be authorized to execute the necessary documents. Is there a motion for any discussion or anything?
I will make the motion to.
Motion by trustee Boland. Who looked left this time? Okay, second by trustee Crumpler. Any discussion? No? Okay, thank you. So you may go ahead and vote. And I vote yes as well. Okay, the item passes. There are no nays to announce. Next item on the agenda is a execution of a shared space agreement between the City of Bloomington Township and Tazwood Community Services Incorporated for office space at the Township Center Building. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion to
Okay,
approve as
Motion
presented.
by trustee Emig and a second by trustee Becker. Any discussion? Seeing none, you may go ahead and vote. And I vote yes as well.
I'm both good. Did you vote on the bid?
Yes,
Okay, thank
yes.
you.
we did. Okay. Okay, item 7 passes. There are no nays to announce. Okay, next item on the agenda is reports by our elected officials, starting with Supervisor Skillroot.
Okay, my report is listed in the document. We're very excited. Thank you for allowing for the space to be used for a couple months for the Tazwood Community Services. I think it'll be a really good fit and it'll get the agency's programs right into the heart of where everyone is at. So the other thing that we're really excited about our recycle program. I think you've probably read that we've had, a full load, $1,800 come back to the township for the program itself. And our recycle program is basically the only one in central Illinois. I've been getting a few phone calls from other counties, other cities, asking about this program. So we're very excited to have this locally, to be using our workfare staff for it. So I'm pretty proud of it. Thank you. I don't have anything else to report.
Okay, thank you. Oh, all right, question?
Deb, did anybody come to Township after the flooding rain event at all? Did you hear anybody or get any requests for assistance after that?
Not anything unusual. No, nothing. Sorry, I didn't know I still had this on. Nothing additional
Okay,
than we normally have been getting. We have been seeing an uptick definitely in the amount of services that they're asking for, just because things are starting to wind down on the moratoriums and the disconnects are happening and things like that.
okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Um,
Had a question.
Oh,
Sorry, Mayor.
Okay, go ahead.
Late question, but Deb, were you going to elaborate on that discrepancy that we talked about at the last township meeting?
I don't believe that I need to. It's pretty self-explanatory there that COVID and the pandemic just didn't allow us to do our programming. And it was across the board. It wasn't just the general assistants, it was the assessors and the cemetery as well.
So that explains kind of the difference in the beginning balance.
Yes,
Okay,
very much.
all right, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor, not supervisor, sorry. Assessor. Scudder.
Hey, good evening. We're working through the assessments to remind everybody that the assessment date we use is January 1st of 2021. And we use a 3-year average to adjust the assessments in the city to the current sale prices of homes that have sold, with assessments of their properties to make adjustments for neighborhoods. We don't know how that's going to work. We hear a lot. We see a lot of change in the markets in 2020 because of COVID. Not what it was expected. We don't know if it's going to slow down or not, but we continue to monitor that and make those adjustments using those 3-year average. And we have seen a little bit of growth, change in the number of permits requested for new single-family homes. So that's showing some additional growth on the residential side in the city.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. No questions. Thank you, Steve. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment were received, emailed, or registered. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. At this point, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Motion by trustee Bowen, second by trustee Becker. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay, thank you. We are adjourned. Take care. Thanks so much. Okay, good evening, everyone. The time is now 6 o'clock, and I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Bloomington City Council to order. First, let's say the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Matthey,
Here.
Councilmember Bolin,
Here.
Councilmember Motney,
Here.
Councilmember Emig,
Here.
Councilmember Becker,
Here.
Councilmember Carrillo,
Here.
Councilmember Ward,
Here.
Councilmember Crable,
Here.
Councilmember Crumpler,
Here.
Mayor Miller Wamble.
Here. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is bittersweet because we have to present a plaque to Councilmember Carrillo to say thank you for your years of service. I know, you never left people indifferent because of the many positions that you've taken. You've advocated for positions sometimes that were unpopular, but you still did it. And those positions at times seem controversial, but however, in the process, however one looks at it, it always sparked community conversation. And I think it helped us look inward to determine who we are as a community and how we want to go forward. But I think one important thing to say is that, the positions that we all take as council members, sometimes people define us by those positions, when in fact, people should also look at us as individuals. And I think in the many, the many people that I have spoken to, who have interacted with you in a private capacity, have always mentioned you as a person who's kind and very thoughtful. And that also includes myself, because I think we've always had pleasant interactions in our time together. So as you embark in this new endeavor of home ownership and multiple trips to home improvement stores, like the many of us, I want again to congratulate you and wish you the very best. And we definitely look forward to interacting with you as a private citizen. Knowing you, I know that you're always very engaged, and I'm sure that you will continue to remain engaged in the community, and we definitely look forward to that. So we do have a plaque for you as a symbol of our recognition. And
Awkward.
yes. It says, City of Bloomington presented to Jennifer Jasmine Carrillo Gomez. I love Jasmine. In grateful appreciation for your outstanding service and leadership as council member for the City of Bloomington. Thank you so much, Jen. And Jen, would you like to say a few words? Not to put you on the spot. Okay, all right, okay. We have time, so, okay, thank you. Let's see. Next item on the agenda. Okay, so our next item on the agenda is public comments. Madam Clerk, do we have public comment?
We do. We actually have 6 people who are registered to speak and present this evening. And then we did receive 2 emailed public comments. Those came from Gary Donahue and Brandon Gray.
Okay, thank you. Public comment is an opportunity for speakers to provide their views and feedback to the city council. It is also an opportunity for the city council to listen and hear diverse points of view. To maximize the impact of public comment and show respect for the expression of all views, speakers should maintain civility and focus on city issues. Speakers must identify themselves for the record, but are not required to give their address. Each speaker is given the floor for 3 minutes, and the council does not respond or engage in debate. Any speaker that engages in threatening or disorderly behavior will be deemed out of order and their time ceased. Thank you.
The first speaker will be Janae Clark.
Janae Clark. Yes. Sure.
Hi. My name is Janae Clark, and I'm here today to make a public statement regarding concerns to this body and about the decision Mayor Mwambe has to make regarding filling the seat of Ward 6. That is being vacated due to the undemocratic mechanics codified, hastily written, and not well thought through representation rules. Given that fundamentally undemocratic reason that this is even a thing, a very clear right presents itself. And anything less is an affront to the people of Ward 6's agency to elect their representation. So let me be clear, the democratic duty of the mayor and this council in these circumstances is to choose the person from the field of applicants who most seamlessly will continue the representation of Ward 6, won freely and fairly in 2019 when they elected Jen Carrillo. It follows that appointing someone who does not fit that bill to whatever degree a closer choice exists would be a fundamental failure of the body and the mayor, and that their illegitimate appointee renders the whole body without the consent to govern. I think that it's important people understand what's at stake here and their ability to democratically elect representation. Beyond that, I, for example, represent a Ward 6 demographic that is woefully underrepresented throughout the history of the city council, a low-income single mother. This underrepresentation stems from a basic time and money reality that of the electoral arena that needs to change. And if not now, then when? Thank you.
Thank you, Janae. Next.
Next up will be Kurt Hudson.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Kurt Hudson, and I live on Grant Road in the Eastgate subdivision of Ward 8. I just wanted to start tonight by recognizing yesterday. August 22nd is an important anniversary for many of us in this community. 10 years ago, yesterday, Bloomington City Council approved the Phase 1 construction contract for Locust Colton. 10 years ago, yesterday. Now, 2 weeks ago, Mr. Gleason called Locust Colton a success. His words, Locust Colton is a successful project. But I don't know, success means different things to different people. 3 phases complete, of a 9-phase project after 10 years. If that constitutes success, then I'm not really sure what standard we're measuring by anymore. I'm not here to give Mr. Gleason a hard time. I'm encouraged by what I've heard over the last few weeks from council. I love the idea of accelerating phase 5 to happen at the same time as phase 4. I love the idea of accelerating phases 8 and 9 to happen immediately after. I love the idea of detention basins, new detention basins, taking maybe some of the load off of our friends further downstream. But a sympathetic ear, a happy council, more discussion, that's not going to solve our problems. No, we need action. We need your action. But why I'm here tonight is to remind you that those of us in phases 3, 4, 5, 8, and 9, Locust Colton will never be a success until it is finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Next.
Next up, we have Bob Sampson.
Mayor and members of the council. My name is Bob Sampson, and I live at 403 Grant Road. When we returned to our home mid-afternoon on June 26th, we discovered significant damage to our basement. This is not a new story. Others, some who have spoken here, experienced much worse. I want to talk about what happened next. Phone calls brought two of our neighbors, one bringing along his children, 2 extra pairs of hands for the work ahead. Our acquaintance with these 2 men and the 2 children was brief. We've only been in the neighborhood a short time. They are not relatives, nor work associates, or people with any long-standing ties to my wife and I. But they knew we were neighbors, and they were our neighbors. Fellow citizens in trouble and needing help right away. And because they reacted, we were able to save several items, pictures, papers, books, that while not carrying high monetary value, meant a great deal to us. Attending these meetings, I and others have learned much more about the so-called act of God and its impact, not only on Eastgate, but on other neighborhoods, especially the West Side, where our fellow citizens, our neighbors, suffered severe losses, at times aggravated by the lack of insurance and the refusal of CMA to acknowledge their claims. I am grateful that the council is considering accelerating the Lucas Colton project in a way that should benefit Eastgate. I appreciate the consistent support voiced by council members for tackling the problems caused by combined sewers on the east side, as well as the west side and other parts of town. But not everyone lives in a combined sewer outflow area, the ones apparently marked for immediate action. But living outside a CSO project area does not mean sewage-filled basements, collapsed walls, lost possessions, and piles of stinking refuse in the streets were or are any less traumatic. When we needed help on June 26th, our neighbors came without asking questions. They cared about us as fellow citizens. Some of them are here tonight. Please, as a council, put in place solutions that address all of our citizens, regardless of their neighborhood or whether their sewers eventually dump into a CSO. Whether we live on the west side or the south side. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Next up, we have Kathy Petty.
Hello, I'm Kathy Petty. I was told sewers are not on the agenda tonight. but I beg to differ. I received an email this week and about tonight's consent agenda regarding the Davis Block subdivisions. Subdivisions require sewers. As a council members, do you know what sewer lines these newer sewers will tie into? Will these sewers tie into already stressed sewer system until the combined sewers are fixed? The answer is yes. New sewers will affect the whole system to the west. This includes a large part of Bloomington. Most everyone that had problems during the June 25th and 26th storms. If this new subdivision includes green space, the city should require it have a detention basin that new storm sewers are connected to, at least until we can be guaranteed that the city sewers are fixed and can handle the extra water during any rainstorm. In the 21st century, 50-year and 100-year rains have little meaning as they are occurring more frequently. Please carefully consider the sewer drainage plan of this new subdivision and do not consent to it without additional plans for storm sewer water. According to the agenda notes, the drainage statement only states that to the best of the engineer's knowledge, drainage of surface waters will not be changed and diversions will go into areas and public drains. Drainage will increase due to paved areas and reduced grasslands. I am not against the subdivision, but I want the city to be sure it will not make current situations worse. Second topic. I would ask the council require compensation to be paid for the alley between 508 and 514 East Jackson Street. This is the second request from a property owner in recent months to be given city land, free and clear.
Thank you, Kathy. Next.
Next up, we'll have Matt Tosco. Just a second, I want to check that mic to make sure that it's still on.
Hello, I'm Matt Tosco. State funds. Very good, thank you. To pay people $100 to get vaccinated, as even our current POTUS said that states should back on July 29th of this year. Furthermore, I'm asking all of our alderpersons to contact Congressman Rodney Davis and Darren LaHood, as well as our senators Durbin and Duckworth, to sponsor the Maintaining Access to Essential Services Act of 2021, which calls for suspending utility shutoffs, waiving utility debt, and restoring everyone's utility services in exchange for billions in loans to private and public utilities. It goes without saying that neither of these asks will cost the city of Bloomington a dime. They're just ways that the 10 of you can use your influence for the betterment of all your constituents in these difficult times. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Next.
Last up, we have Mary Cramp.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm here because I've been out getting more signatures on our petition, and I'm happy to say that we have in total about 145, and we have 38 from the Oak Ridge subdivision, which is also in Ward 8. So the people of Ward 8 made the comment that they believe that more attention needs to be paid to our infrastructure. And they sympathize with us because we have the combined sewer problem. But they know that down the road, their subdivision is aging also. That's a subdivision that's about 30, 35 years old. And they want help to be there when the time comes and they need help in their neighborhood. So I would like to present the additional signatures here. 9 come from Eastgate and 38 come from Oak Ridge. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mary. Okay. Anybody else?
No, that's all that registered and we already read the list of emails. So thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that anybody would like to have removed? Okay, Councilmember. No. Craybill.
Thank you. 7K.
7K, okay. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
7I.
7I.
7J.
7J. Okay, is that it? Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item 7K, 7I, and 7J?
I will make the motion to approve.
Okay,
With the
motion,
exception of
yep, all those.
J, I, and J.
Okay,
And I'll second that.
okay, so motion by Councilmember Bolin, second by Councilmember Crable. Well, actually, we're doing the electronic voting this time, right? Okay, so if everybody could go ahead and vote.
Give me just a second. Sorry.
So please just bear with us. We're trying a new electronic system. We're good?
Councilmember Crumpler. Perfect. We got it. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, is this everybody? Okay. Good, okay. Looks like the item passes. There are no nays to announce. So next on the agenda, we're going to take these items in the order that they were pulled. So let's start with item 7K, Councilmember Crable.
Thank you, Mayor. And this has to do with the Davis subdivision. Trying to get my notes here. So as you know, as a resident, Ms. Cramp explained there were some issues.
Sorry, could you speak a little louder into the microphone? I know
Yeah,
just for-
so there were some issues, some concerns with how this new development would impact Eastgate. That was shared with me even earlier today. I reached out and Bob Yale was able to give some good answers with regard to how this will not, the inlets will not go to the south, but to the north, and will not impact the Eastgate area. So just wanted to make people aware of that before we voted. And I would now move to approve item 7K.
Okay, thank you. Motion by Councilmember Crable. Is there a second? Okay, second by
second.
Councilmember Becker. If everybody could go ahead and vote. Okay, it looks like the item passes and there are no nays to announce. Next item on the agenda is item 7I and pulled by Councilmember Ward.
Thank you. I actually wanted to pull this only to draw attention to it because I think it's an important item that is really an improvement in the way that we do public comment to make it possible for people who are unable to attend city council meetings in person to still have their voices heard. Up until now, we've been accepting public comment in person or by email, but when it's emailed, really only the council sees it in the moment, and people's voices are not heard or amplified in that way. And so I'm lifting this up as a real positive change and would actually have just one question. Could we get some clarification on how people can submit their public or can link in for public comment in the future?
Sure.
Yeah, I can
Leslie?
speak to that. So it's really previous to the way that we were doing it before under our COVID rules. And so public comment at cityblm.org is a location where anyone can email their public comment to us in advance of the meeting, and then that's provided directly to council. And then we also have, it's cityblm.org/register, and that's where you can register in advance. Through that, we'll go back to our previous process where they have the option to check whether they will choose to be here in person or whether they'd like to call in. When you fill out that form, you must provide a valid email address and also provide the phone number that you intend to call in with, because that's what we identify you when you come into the system. So the phone number is very important. For those that don't use email or something like that, please feel free to call the hub and they can help you get registered as well. The phone number for that is 309-434-2240. Or if you want to email the public comment, we can also help you through that.
And will those links and so forth be included on the city website with the rest of the agenda and so forth on a regular basis?
Yeah, so we'll actually be updating the public comment language that's on the agendas to include that similarly to how we did during, I said during COVID, and COVID's not over, but I think you guys know what I meant in the sense of when we were doing things remotely fully. So we'll update it on the agenda, and then also the hub website, which can be reached at bloomingtonhub.org. We'll have all of the links available there too.
And that would begin with the next meeting on the 13th of September.
That is correct, if everything is passed this evening.
Great. Excellent. Well, I move that we pass this.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Ward and second by Councilmember Craybill. If you can go ahead and vote. Okay, the item passes and there are no nays to announce. Next is item 7J as pulled by
Yes,
Councilmember Boland.
Item 7J has to do with the alley vacation, which sounds weird. Vacation of the alley. I would like to make a motion to table this particular item later on in the meeting. We're going to have a discussion about the new policy. And I recall at the public hearing, the only one that spoke wanted to follow the policy. So I'm thinking, well, which policy? So I would like to table the consent agenda item, somehow approve or discuss the regular agenda item related to the same topic, and then come back to that particular topic.
Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion to table until the 13th.
Mhm. Well, Jeff, could you speak to that? Because it doesn't seem to me that we're doing anything dramatic in this particular area. We're just saying to have the option, right, in this particular item.
That's correct, Mayor. So the ordinance that's in the consent agenda is the ordinance that would amend our policy to allow the council to waive the consideration. And so if the council wants to take that up now or later in the agenda, either is fine, or at a future meeting, that's your prerogative as well. The ordinance that's on the regular agenda is addressing the specific alley that we had a public hearing on at the last meeting. So, and technically this ordinance, won't be effective immediately. So the ordinance that's on the regular agenda is actually, amending the previous ordinance to allow that waiver. But basically, we set this up that so you would be able to discuss the policy first or approve the policy if there's where the majority is on that. So you take action on the policy and then you would take action on the specific alley,
And I
if
mean,
that helps to clarify.
and the regular agenda is coming up right after this, so
That's right.
we might as well discuss it now. That's what you want.
Well, the reason I wanted to table because I'm confused as to the order. Now, this can be voted down, but or die without a second, but I'm confused. I want to make sure that we have a policy in place before we make a decision on what's on the consent agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, so this action item is to basically designate that policy.
Mhm.
And so if it's voted down, then I assume the council would not approve the ordinance on the regular agenda, if that helps to clarify. And Mayor, as you said, you can debate this and take action on this
Right.
now, pulled off the consent agenda. It's really the pleasure of the council.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it's been pulled off the agenda, it's the consent agenda, so we might as well discuss it now. And then we can move on to the next thing. And if we vote this down at this moment, then we can vote down the other item.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
If this item from the consent agenda were voted down, could we still vote to pass the agenda item B?
I don't believe so.
Actually, yes. So
Okay.
I wrote the ordinance on the regular agenda. So that's it's an amendment to your previous policy as well. Basically, it's an exclusion. So you can amend an ordinance with another ordinance, and that's the way that the ordinance on the regular agenda is drafted. And we provided an alternative in there. Instead of approving that ordinance, there's a motion to table it, and we'd come back with an ordinance requiring compensation. Now, I think our understanding is that if the council is going to require compensation, the petition is probably going to be withdrawn, so we might not actually bring back an ordinance. But the alternate to passing the ordinance on the regular agenda is to pass or approve a motion to table it, directing staff to bring back an ordinance requiring consideration.
Sure. Councilmember Monty.
Just to clarify, are we allowed to discuss this now? If
There
so,
needs to
Yeah.
be a
I have a
second.
question.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah,
Do want a
you
second?
motion. Can somebody second? At least to discuss it for the purposes of.
I'll second.
Okay, Councilmember Emick. Okay, go ahead.
My question relates to the difference between assessed valuation, which I think is something that the prior conversation kind of got stuck on, versus actual market value of this particular example property that we're going to be discussing later today. Because we've talked about it as if it has a valuation in the $9,000 range, when in effect, it appears to be unmarketable. So essentially having a market value of 0. But I'm curious if you might be able to guide me to the right thinking on that, because I appreciate the concerns from the public about us giving away property that has perceived value. And perhaps that's where the difference is.
Yeah, that's a great question. I might need to ask Public Works to come up here. In 2016, which I believe is when the council adopted this policy, there was a lot of work that went into trying to figure out what that dollar amount should be. And you're right, there's no perfect way to do that because it is unusual property. And so ultimately, I believe we looked at how a lot of other jurisdictions, evaluate that type of property. And then ultimately, there was an agreement that this was probably the best way to come up with a value. And we did put in there that people could get an appraiser, they could challenge that, and we could come up with a different compensation requirement. But that was kind of going to be the default. And if it's all right, I would suggest maybe Mr. Yeo can probably add to that.
Sure, go ahead, Bob.
Good evening. Thank you, everybody. Yes, as Jeff said, there's two different ways that we can determine the appraised value of a property such as this outlined in the ordinance itself. One is an MAI appraiser, which we did not do for this case. The other is taking 3 times the assessed value of the adjacent property's value, taking that back to a square foot cost and applying that to the square foot of the alley itself, simply using exactly what's in our ordinance.
So the actual value, market value, which would be kind of the true value, I think you could argue is perhaps zero. Using the adjacent property, I mean, the only party that it would have any value to would be the person that has the opportunity to use it. So just again, wanting to make sure that I'm not getting hung up on a technicality here in terms of the actual market value versus a formula that we've come up with to essentially represent it having a value. For example, I don't believe this property would be marketable for sale at any price other than to perhaps an adjacent property owner. Just, wanting to, again, check my thinking on that.
No, I think that's right. And I think to go a step further, because it's so hard to put a value on it, it certainly does have some value to the person that's acquiring it, right? Because presumably they're going to own more land, the lot line's going to get bigger. And the statute does allow for the municipality to collect compensation. And so, but there's not a hard and fast rule as to how that's going to be calculated. So this was, and Bob can correct me if I'm wrong, but a best attempt to start to put a number to that. And it's far from perfect. And as you said, in reality, nobody can go out and buy that. It's, really got no value except for to the person that's going to get the property. And so this was an attempt to, using the assessed value, putting in the alternate to get an appraised value, an attempt to figure out what that compensation requirement might be. But there's no, I think to answer your question, I don't think you're missing anything. It's, in reality, it probably has very little value to anybody else.
I mean, it's unimprovable as is. And, it does also come with it cost to the city as well. Just in thinking about our discussion previously, that would be the other observation I have, is that we put more rigor around understanding the actual cost to maintain a property that essentially has no market value or little market value. I guess I'm just challenging that. I understand the thought process that went into valuing it equivalent to adjacent property on a per square foot basis. But I do think that appears to the public as if we are simply giving away public property, which would be inappropriate. And I don't think that's really the case, but I do think from an optics perspective, that's what it sounds like.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Becker.
So I agree with Sheila, and I'd like to just look at two sides of this. If we keep the alley, we don't let the person own it, then we have to maintain it, so we have a cost. Period. No changes in the adjacent values, so the tax revenue that we get is the same. I agree, there's no market value. If we let the person take it over, we save the money. The market value of the adjacent properties goes up, which probably takes that assessment up and gives the city more. I see zero negative impact or zero of anything inappropriate as far as giving away public value to this one. I think the city is better off if we do it.
All right. Did you want to go ahead? I'll
Well,
I'll
I
get
was-
to you, Kamal.
All I was going to point out is that we should probably actually address Donna's motion, which was to table this. And a lot of the conversation we're getting into is actually about item 8B. So we should probably just take the motion first and deal with that and then move forward. So, and keep comments about the actual property to that property. I agree with everything that's been said, but structurally, we should probably come back to the actual motion.
Okay, sure. Do you want to go ahead, Councilmember?
Yes, and I wanted just to.
No,
talk-
I was going to.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Councilmember Ward, yes, sorry.
So I guess I'm not sure what discussion there needs to be about tabling it. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm not sure if the question I want to ask is in order or not, but I'll ask it.
Yeah,
and
go
you
ahead,
can
ask it.
tell it's out of order. I'm trying to figure out, I'm questioning the idea that this property has no worth to anyone. And the question I have has to do with, hypothetically, could an alley be purchased by someone else besides adjacent property owners?
Yeah, and Bob, you can probably address that, but it's not a buildable lot. It's-
I'm gonna get to that, but
Okay.
I'm just asking
right.
hypothetically, could someone else purchase that alley or an alleyway besides an adjacent property owner?
Apologize. The way this is set up is that it would be able to be purchased or given to the adjacent property owners, not to somebody else to come in and purchase.
That's the way the ordinance reads.
Correct.
So another person couldn't, for example, come in and purchase that, an alleyway, and turn it in to, for example, green space to address floodwater absorption.
That's not how
that-
we've had it set up at this point, no. So
Thank
correct,
you.
you're correct.
Councilmember Crable.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to make sure I understand this ordinance change. So basically now there is no discretion under the ordinance to waive a fee request. The added language here would give the council that discretion.
That's right. There is waiver language if we're transferring it to another governmental body, but there was not when it was purely a private consideration. And so the language that was added says that if the council determines that it's in the best interest of the public, the alley serves no public purpose, and the vacation will reduce city maintenance expenses, then in that situation, a waiver would be, could be granted.
And then when we decide the waiver, there's nothing limiting us to how we determine value, right? We could use appraisal, we could use market value. That would just be a discussion we would have on an individual, request basis.
Not necessarily. So the policy sets up the process for determining value. And there's a process in there where the petitioner, I believe, can, if they disagree with the amount that the city has come up with, they can counter that with an appraisal. And I think ultimately, I'd have to go back and look at those specific provisions, but then ultimately, I think you're right, the council does make that decision, but there's a process set up for how that is determined. It's in 4C, I believe, of the policy.
I see that now. Thank you. Then I would just ask, any clarification, Donna, or you still want your motion to stand?
And your motion is to table, right? Are you still
Yeah,
wanting
my
to do that?
motion is to table until September 13th. And that would be like after tonight's discussion and vote on the regular agenda item.
Mhm.
And I just want to add, well, no, I'll forget it.
Okay.
And there was the second.
Yeah, second by Councilmember Emig. Okay. Is everybody ready to vote? So a yes was to table, right? Yes is a check mark,
Yes, that's correct. A yes
Okay.
is to table.
and then the X's are, red X's are, just to be sure.
Those
Okay.
are the no's, not
Okay.
wanting to table.
All right, so from what I could see is 6-3 to table, correct?
That is correct. If I could
Okay.
read the
Sure.
no's. So we have in order, Councilmember Becker, Councilmember Carrillo, and Councilmember Ward. Oh, I'm sorry, Crumpler. I'm reading Ward 9. So let me say that again. We have Councilmember Becker, Councilmember Carrillo, and Councilmember Crumpler.
Okay. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is regular agenda, actually. Sorry, I'm lost here with a couple of different things. Okay, so item 8A on a regular agenda, presentation of the City Youth Enrichment Program as requested by the Human Resource Department. And there is no motion, just a presentation. And City Manager Gleason.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and to the community. This mentorship program is something that the three councils that I've worked for have made a priority. And this has grown over the last couple of years, and we're very proud of this program. And it's grown amidst COVID the last couple of years. Special thanks to the local chapter of the NAACP and also the Jewel Foundation. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Nicole, and bigger and better next year.
Leslie, how do I?
It's on. You just
Is
got
it
it.
on? Okay. Thank you very much. And let me lean in a little bit so you can hear me. So yes, we are very excited to be here this evening to present to you the Youth Enrichment Program. Most of the detail is already in your packet, but just for the public that's in attendance here, this was something that originated with the Jewel Foundation and bringing this idea forward to city leadership a couple of years ago. Of course, City Manager Gleason, Deputy City Manager Tyus, 100% supports the program. And so turned over to HR, let's get something going. We started small last year. This year we've grown quite a bit, up to 15 mentees, where last year we had 3. We are hoping that we continue in future years to continue that growth, add different enrichment programs. But really, I want you to hear from the youth tonight, so I don't want to spend a lot of time taking up their time. But I do want to point out some very important people in the audience that I think deserve the same recognition. So I know Jewel, or Jade, do I call Jewel? Jade Hersey is here representing the Jewel Foundation. We've got Mr. and Mrs. Williams, which is Sahara Williams' parents, also in the audience. We've got Mr. Jackson, who is Bradley's father, and Miss Eaton, who is Jadon's mother. I also want to point out Nikki Richards, our community relations manager. She is the one that was really integral and probably should be the one presenting to you tonight, but she was the one that started the program, really laid that solid foundation so that we can continue to grow from here. So I do want her to have some recognition as well. But I'm done talking. I'm going to turn it over to these guys, and they're going to present to you name, age, and where they go to school. They're going to talk to you about the highlights of the program, things that really resonated with them, and then also feedback on how we can improve future years. So we'll start with Sahara. We'll go to Jadon next. We'll do Jackson/Alex. And Bradley will wrap us up. So I'll turn it over to them. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sahara Williams, and I attend Normal West High School, and I'm 15 years old. This summer, I was an intern for the Public Works Department. And through this, I got to learn things that they don't really teach you in school, like the interview process, more about the city government, and how to communicate with adults. To go over that again, I really like how we were treated like adults coming into it. It really made me feel comfortable being around the adults as well. And hopefully this next upcoming summer, we can have more younger people come in too. Thank you.
So one thing I do need to add about Sahara, and Jade kind of gave it away, we had a pizza party at the end of our season wrap up, and one of the other ladies that's on the board of the Jewel Foundation made a comment about it was so amazing to see one of the mentees. At the time, we didn't know she was talking about Sahara, but she was at her house with her daughter, 6 p.m. And she says, I need to go home now. I got to get ready for work. And she said, well, what time do you work? She said, tomorrow morning. And she said, but it's 6 o'clock. And she goes, I know, I've got to pack my lunch, got to get my hair ready, get my outfit picked out. So just stories like that, I think, show that this has really had an impact. So I wanted to add that. Sorry. And this is Jadon.
Hello, my name is Jadon Eman. I'm 16 years old. I go to a normal community, and I'm here to share with you my experience with working with the city of Bloomington. And yeah, my experience was working with a T-ball leader. I was working with a T-ball leader, and it taught me like how it taught me how it taught me how to save. Like it taught me how to save more. It taught me how to it taught me how to be on time more. Like, and then it taught me how to it also taught me how to keep repeating yourself a lot, like because kids who keep consistently repeating yourself. And one thing I want to change, I want to change really nothing because it was just a really great experience all around. And I hope I get to do it again next year.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jackson Phillips. Some of you may know me as Alex Phillips. This summer, I interned with the city clerk department. My mentor was Amanda Stutzman, who was the deputy city clerk, and I worked in the hub. Most of my experience over this summer was working with liquor licenses, which is ironic because I'm 19 and I mean, but yeah, over the course of this summer, I learned a lot about legal processes and how businesses work and everything that businesses have to do to give back to the community and everything that our local government has to do to give back to the community and make sure that these businesses are run correctly. And this has really been an enlightening experience. The hub team is amazing. There's so much positivity, so much love, and they treat me like I'm a member of the team. I currently am a sophomore at University of Illinois, Chicago. This semester, I will be staying at home and then returning back to school in January. But in the meantime, I will be working at least to the end of November with the city of Bloomington. And that is something that I'm proud about, something that I brag about all the time. And yeah, thank you for this amazing opportunity.
So quick note on Jackson, yes, he actually has transitioned into a full-time seasonal employee with us. So timing could not have been better. He has helped out a great deal in the hub. We really appreciate him. Last but not least is Bradley Ross Jackson. Bradley probably had, I'd say, the most flexible experience with the city, and he'll talk a little bit about that. But you need to know he has a new bow tie on every single day, and he has got an amazing collection. So I'll let him tell you a little bit more about him.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bradley Ross Jackson. I'm 15 years old and I attend Normal Community High School. There is a destiny that makes us brothers. None go his way alone. All that we send into the lives of others comes back into our own. I thoroughly enjoyed my summer experience with the city of Bloomington. On a daily basis, I was able to utilize my critical thinking skills while challenging my paradigms. What I like most about my summer internship at the city of Bloomington was gaining insights and perspectives from various departments. I arrived for the first 2 weeks of my internship, all decked out in my suit, shirt, and tie. Well, some call me the tie guy. Those who I worked with in public works quickly told me that I was a tad bit overdressed for that department. As such, the next day I wore blue jeans with tennis shoes and without my signature tie. I was honored to work with Mr. Arnie, Mr. Karch, and Mr. Dominic Callis. They told me about the construction, they shared quotes, and most importantly, we discussed the importance of building relationships with others. I remember that Mr. Dominic and Callis and I met with residents who were impacted by a construction project. We actually made a positive impact in that resident's life. The next 2 to 3 weeks, I worked with HR or human relations. I learned a plethora of information from Mrs. Nicole Albertson, Ms. Lindsay Denny, Mr. Michael Hurt, Mr. Billy Tyus, and many others. I also created the employee spotlight video with Amaya Hersey. I was able to monitor interviews with Ms. Lindsay, and I offer my recommendation on the various candidates. Diversity and inclusion was very crucial. I worked with the diversity inclusion chief, Mr. Hurt, and he shared that diversity and inclusion not only entails racial and social justice issues, but also matters related to the differently abled or disabled. My time at the police department was enlightening, as I enjoyed working with the assistant chief, Mr. Wamsley, student resource officers, and Officer Furman. The dispatch calls also reinforced my appreciation for law enforcement. What I would like to see in future programs would include more students involved in this excellent opportunity. I was not aware of the program until I joined the NAACP Youth Council. I will serve as a walking billboard for this program, as my experience was quite memorable. I thank you all for living out the principles of excellence by mentoring and monitoring the students this summer. I'm not committed to mentoring by others. After all, a candle loses nothing of its light by lighting another. City of Bloomington, thank you all and good day.
Well, thank you all very much. This was a fantastic opportunity. I'm very thankful for the staff for putting it together, for the parents for supporting their students, and you know, we often talk about diversity, but I think you know, as if we should be able to find people right there, right off the bat, you know, but I think that the important thing is that we have to build the bench in order to be able to bring more diversity into many of our organizations. So I definitely want to thank the staff for putting together this kind of effort, because it lands, you know, if we went from 3 to now 15, I think the future is bright and we can do much more in future years. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I have to say, I'd love to see Bradley in jeans because I've never seen him not dressed up. Be awesome. So I don't know if any other council members have questions or comments. Oh, Councilmember Bullen.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just want to say I'm very proud of you for participating in this and kind of sticking it out is my point. It's just, yeah, I'm just very proud. And if I had the opportunity to do what you did, going through all the different areas of the city and learning more, I would do it.
Thank you. Councilmember Carrillo.
Yeah, I was going to say quite the opposite, which is that when I was 16 years old, I wasn't doing this and I probably would not have been doing this. But it's really exciting to see you all getting the most out of these experiences. You all spoke beautifully And it's not easy. People get nervous coming up here doing public comment, grown folks. So really, really excited to see you all shining bright in front of us. Thanks for your work.
Councilmember Kribel.
Yeah, I'll just echo what's been said. You're all awesome. I love that we have this program, and it's not only a benefit for the people that participate in the program, right? But for the city itself. And I hope that, I know Jackson's great, you're working for the city still, but others that are finishing school, let's keep in touch, right? And make sure they're aware of opportunities that we have down the road.
Okay. Councilmember Emig.
Thank you for sharing. This is definitely the best part of my day. And you are all leaders and beautiful, and go forth and tell everybody about this program. So we have many, many more in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to finish up, I want to make sure we also lift up the Jewel Foundation, who has been instrumental in this particular effort. And I know Jade is here, and your husband also works in public works and has been instrumental in this particular endeavor. And there are other organizations in town who support the Jewel Foundation and many of the things that they do, taking kids to places like Atlanta and things like that. So it's fantastic. This is and Councilmember Emig is right. You know, this is it's a fun part of the day. We should have more of these during council meetings. So thank you all very much for coming, and thank you to the parents. I do know the parents of Sahara as well, you know, Alex and Sharon. I have to mention them and embarrass them in front of everybody. But they're good friends of mine, so thank you all. Okay. Next item on the agenda is item 8B, consideration and action on an ordinance approving the vacation of an alley between Lot 8 of McDowell subdivision, and Lot 4 of JB Stevenson subdivision, which will vacate an alley between 508 and 514 East Jackson Street and waiving the city's compensation requirement as requested by the Public Works Department and the Community Development Department. So I guess I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Gleason.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before we continue this conversation, I've got a question for Jeff Jurgens, Corporation Counsel. So with the consent agenda item not passing, what is before council tonight?
Thank you, City Manager. So there are two options on this. The first is to approve the ordinance as is. And the ordinance was written in a way that did not, the policy change wasn't necessarily conditioned on this ordinance passing. So the council can still move forward with this ordinance. This ordinance has specific language that says it's amending the ordinance that enacted the initial policy. So it uses very similar language. So one option is to go forward with this ordinance waiving the compensation requirement. The second option is to table this until the next meeting or another future meeting and direct staff to bring back an ordinance that requires compensation. And in that case, we would draft such an ordinance. We would require the compensation be paid prior to bringing that ordinance back in front of the council, and then the council would vote on that ordinance at a future meeting. So those are the two primary options that are before the council tonight.
Okay, so is there a motion one way or another? So we have alternative A or alternative B.
I would like to make a motion. We approve alternative A, which waives the fees for it, compensation.
Okay. Is
I
there a
second.
Okay, so second by Councilmember Emig. Discussion.
So thanks, Mayor. The reason why I'm supportive of this is there's a couple of things that we haven't talked about on this. Well, first of all, there's a picture in here. This is in Ward 1 over on Jackson Street, and there's a picture in here, and you can see from that picture that this alley is in horrible shape. barely passable by vehicles right now. And every time we get any kind of inclement weather, it gets worse. And we don't have a plan of when we're going to fix this. It's not on any schedule coming up in our streets and surfaces plan where we're going to actually fix this. The petitioner is asking for us to waive the fee so that he can go in and fix this alley himself. So we have no plan. He wants to go in and fix it, but he can't do that if we charge him for it. But the one thing that we haven't talked about is this alley is not on the public tax rolls right now. If we waive this fee, he fixes it, that actually improves the land, and it will actually raise the assessed value, which is the only way that it's ever going to have a fee. So it will be assessed and taxable property forever. It benefits the property owner, it benefits the renters that are around it, and it actually benefits the city because it goes on its public tax rolls and it's never been there before.
Councilmember Bowen, you have your light up.
Yeah, I went over and looked at the property rather than just look at the pictures. And I'm curious, all three properties are owned by the same person. What is the use of the two, or how are the properties used that are on Jackson? Do you know? Are they rental properties?
My understanding is he lives in one and rents the other two. They were all falling down and about to be condemned, and he went in and fixed them
Sure,
all.
no, I get that, but so the primary residence for these people is on Taylor? I mean, that's what it appears. It's a nicely finished home. And the other two looks like they might be rental units.
I have to walk over there and look at the houses, and I know which one that Mr. Gray lives in, but I have to actually look at them.
And I'm not against vacating. I think that's important. He's asking for a private driveway basically to access his, what appears to be his personal residence. But I do think that the city should be compensated, maybe not at the $9,000 mark, but I do think that there should be some compensation because the property tax that the city would get is 13 cents on the dollar. So I'm guessing that with the property tax going up, if he fixes it, it may take 10 years for the city to recoup whatever the value increase is that he's getting by us waiving compensation. And the other thing is, Julie, this is for you. It looks like that alley was paved over historic bricks. And I personally would like to see those bricks kept within the city coffers to use to patch some of the historic streets that need to be patched. Now, I'm not sure the entire stretch is brick, but what I saw from the street up to where the crumbling asphalt is, it looks like it's, the historic brick. So that's just a consideration that I'm having here.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. All right. So let's see, Councilmember Ward, Councilmember Crumpler, and then Enid.
Yeah, I'd like to just clarify that going ahead with this waiver would benefit a private citizen. Can someone just say yes to that? That this, if we would waive this fee, this would be the city giving a private citizen effectively $10,000. Is that correct?
No.
I think I'd respond that it's mutually beneficial. In the memo, it shares the maintenance costs to the city that we would save.
Yeah, I hear the mutuality, but I see also a private citizen getting a driveway out of the deal. The other thing I wanted to just clarify is how many years it would take to recoup. if we're dividing $10,000 by 500, that's about 20 years to recoup the money for the city. And I just want to lift that up. And then the third point that I'd like to make is that I'm not entirely convinced that paving over more green space in our city is a common good. I'm increasingly becoming convinced that having more green space is a better thing than less green space. And so it doesn't seem to me that it is necessarily a mutual good for the city if the possibility would be there to do something else besides have more pavement in the city. So I'm not inclined to vote in favor of this.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Crumpler.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'm in support of Jamie's comments. It looks like to me from my reading of the item on the agenda tonight, the city currently has no plan to improve this space. And we do have a private citizen in this case who is willing to do that. And it seems to me that this is a case where both the city and this individual benefit from this decision. So I would plan to vote in favor of the waiver. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Emig.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question first of clarification. What is the origin of making the waiver a possibility? In other words, has anyone ever paid the city to gain an alleyway as part of their property? Or has that been a deterrent?
Probably have to ask Bob that question. I'm not sure what the answer to that is. I believe we've looked at, there have been, I think, some situations where we've gotten different forms of consideration, but Bob's going to be the best historical answer to that.
Thank you, Bob.
Based on my best recollection, with this policy being in place about 5 years, I believe the one that we waived is for Eastview. I think Kevin walked through that a couple weeks ago.
Right.
That's a non-for-profit, so a little bit different. And routinely before the policy was in place, we would vacate alleys for no compensation.
So thus, I know there hasn't been much time, but thus far, nobody has paid the city to acquire an alley in
Based
this
on my best
fashion.
recollection, that is correct.
Could you speculate that it's preventing people from potentially investing in these spaces, whether they become green or paved or planted or whatever, if we charge them to pay us for it?
I'm certain that's a consideration. To speculate each individual's point of view, I can't do that. But in this particular
Of
case,
course.
this individual has indicated upfront that they don't have an interest in paying for the vacation of the alley, if they then have to turn around and pay for the improvements of the alley as it's their own property.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I hear the other points that have been made. I will vote in favor of waiving the fee on this one, given that in the sort of the overall scheme of things, it will take years to recoup the investment, but it will be a much more immediate betterment of the property. And I'm not convinced that this particular patch of land might be construed in another way. I do see the brick. In fact, the flooding on my street revealed the brick beneath Fell Avenue. You can actually see the original brick. And when they repaved Clinton, you could see all of the brick. I don't know if this is how those bricks will be recouped for brick restoration. I mean, I think that's an interest. Yeah, but
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know if they could be used, but I hate to see them paved over, and if they could be used, I'd rather have them used. That's.
hey, I get it. But I would say that in this case, that's unlikely. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So it looks like we don't have any other questions. So if you would go ahead and vote, and the motion is to approve the proposed ordinance alternative A. Okay, that looks like a 5-4 vote in favor of approving. And Madam Clerk, could you please announce?
And Mayor, this ordinance requires I believe it's a 3/4 vote.
Oh, that's right.
So
That's right.
this
It should have been
actually-
7, right?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
so this actually would not vote as is,
Okay.
or not be.
Doesn't
approved.
pass. Okay. All right. Could you go ahead and announce the nays?
Yes, so we have Councilmember Bolin, Councilmember Crable, Councilmember Carrillo, and Councilmember Ward.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is our Finance Director's report, and I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Gleason for introductory remarks.
Does it just die, or is there another proposal? Because if it just dies, that means that Brandon can't even be given the option to buy it if he changes his mind about paying for it, right?
Somebody can make another motion, certainly.
I'll make that motion.
And what is the motion?
Oh, I mean, I guess, I don't know, Jeff, how you would phrase it, but that he still has the opportunity to buy it for whatever the market value is.
Right, so
Mhm.
so perhaps a motion to table the matter until the next meeting, and staff can work with the petitioner and see if there are other alternatives that could be brought forward.
Sure, that actually sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, is there a second?
I will second. That's
Okay.
option B.
Yep.
correct? Yeah,
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right. Okay. Let's go ahead and vote. She's working on it. Okay, so alternative B passes. Okay. All right, so next item on the agenda, then it's the Finance Director's report, sorry. And City Manager Gleason, introductory remarks.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Finance Director Scott Rathbun is going to present his monthly Finance Director's report. It's hard to believe that we're a quarter of the way into FY22. Started, let's say, May 2nd. We started working on FY23. And, we're still trending well as a community. And that's not to suggest that we don't have negative impacts related to COVID, but overall, we are doing well. Scott?
No, the other microphone.
He just changed the batteries.
So as the city manager mentioned, and I went over this briefly last month, the revenues for FY22 are actually trending very, very well. According to Illinois Municipal League, IML, they do revenue forecasts and they put those out to all municipalities. They and a lot of other forecasters who basically got, the impacts of COVID wrong. There's been a lot of companies that have fared very well. There's been pent up demand. The stimulus, the federal government stimulus, monetary policy, keeping interest rates down. This had a very positive impact on our revenues, starting in April or so. Now, there is a 2-month delay on sales tax revenues. So that's why, at the end of a fiscal year, we wait a few months, we finish out that fiscal year. There has been no material changes from FY21 from the last report. So that's why tonight we're going to be launching in to 22. So not a lot of detail to go over, more of a general guide or discussions about how we're trending. So revenues trending very well, but a note of caution related to commodity prices and the availability of labor. We have $61 million in capital projects budgeted for the year. So, going into the year, things are just kicking off. Revenues are looking good, but we have to keep an eye on those prices. Checked with our procurement manager. There's issues related to, contractors holding prices or reluctant to hold prices contractually for any amount of time. So we'll have to be monitoring that as the year progresses. Next slide, please. So bring your attention, first of all, to the year-to-date variance column. As you can see, there's only one category that is under budget year-to-date, and that's utility tax. It's a common theme. The telecom portion of that has been trending downward for the last few years. Now, I do want to mention that we did budget major tax revenues about $3.6 million lower for FY 2022. At the time we were closing out the budget last spring, we thought there might be a residual impact from COVID, but I want to highlight a couple of line items. So home rule sales tax, $372,000 over budget year to date with just one payment. We've received another one recently, but as of July, just the one. That's $982,000 over the prior year. Now you can see in the far right column, roughly 20% ahead of budget for that 1 month. We budgeted 6% reduction in home rule. So our over budget is far offsetting the reduction in the budget we put in for the year. Because otherwise we could kind of have a false stat if I just came up here and said, hey, we're trending over budget for all these categories when we took the budgets down over prior year. Going down the page, local motor fuel tax. This drives our asphalt and concrete fund. So $30,000, roughly over budget year to date. It's $90,000 better than this time last year. We took that budget down by 15%, pretty significant, thinking that there was going to be a very significant lingering impact from COVID, especially with the remote workforce. You can see that we're 6% over budget for the last month. So there's an offset going on there. We'd like to see that come back. We'll have to just keep an eye on that. Food and beverage, very reflective of the local economy. I mean, all these categories are, but this one really kind of shows what's going on here locally. $154,000 over budget year to date, $322,000 compared to last year when we had the quarantine in effect. So we took that budget down by 12.5%, but you can see we were almost 22% over budget for the last month. So, very good statistics there, showing what I mentioned previously, that pent up demand, stimulus package. We do have a strong local economy as well, though. Replacement tax. I spent some time on this last month. Replacement tax is S corps, pass-through corporations income tax. IML has a big write-up on this. There's quite a few industries that actually fared very well during COVID. Insurance, logistics kinds of industries. So $719,000 over budget year to date with just 2 payments out of 8. So we've attained 78% of our full year budget with just 2 payments in replacement tax. So you can see it's $687,000 ahead from the prior year, 103% over budget. And then the very last item, hotel motel. I'd like to get a little bit more background in this. I've heard that, the construction going on at Rivian, there could be people staying at the local hotels and motels related to this, but we're $150,000 over budget, $219,000 over budget, or not over budget compared to prior year. And that's 71% over budget year to date for the last month. And we took that budget down by 87%. We thought that was really going to be heavily impacted for the year. So that's very positive to see that. We'll have to watch it, see if it maintains that trajectory. So again, revenues faring very well, stimulus, pent up demand, low interest rates. The prediction for the rest of the year is that's going to start to dwindle, that growth, but still do very, very well. Next slide, please. This is our general fund revenue and expenditure exhibit. We've changed this back to the exhibit that we utilized in the first few months of the year. We've taken out the projection columns. It's way too early to start doing projections, but we're starting to notate, variances to prior year or variances to the budget in the right-hand column. It's very early. Some of these revenues only have 1 month of activity to go through each of these line items. But I will just highlight for the tax line, we have $20.3 million year to date. You can see it last year at the same time, we were at $16.2 million. So that was a really initial early impact of COVID, at the beginning of 2021. The salaries and benefits, they're slightly over the trend. Let me back up a second. The way this exhibit is laid out, we basically divide the number of months that we've realized so far and divide that into 12, and they show that as a trend. That's not a statistic that you can you can use to measure every single category, but it helps just to kind of give you a point of reference. So we should be approximately 25% through our budgets year to date, but a lot of these things are seasonal, the revenues, our parks departments, expenditures, et cetera. But our salaries and benefits should trend pretty close. We're slightly ahead because we had 3 pay periods in July. So it's an explainable variance. We have put in, I'm going to jump back up to revenues for just a second. You can see the American Rescue Plan funds, relief, the $6.7 million that's showing as revenue right now. We don't have a projection column, so that's just kind of grossing up our year-to-date activity, making it look very good. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, where it shows current activity, favorable, unfavorable, it shows positive 5.6 million. And if you look over to the right, you can see at this point in time, last year, we were at negative 4.3 million. Well, if you take out the $6.7 million American Rescue Plan funds, we'd be at a $1.1 million underage for this point in time compared to last year's 4.3. That's all related to that third line from the top, the $20.3 million in taxes versus the $16.2 million in taxes last year at this point in time before we started seeing that bounce back. So to kind of keep in perspective that, the American Rescue Plans will be discussed by council, they will be utilized, maybe transferred to other funds. A lot of different directions there. We put those as a reduction in that first or the second column there at the bottom, showing that coming back out of fund balance. Next slide, please. We may look to update this exhibit for the year. This is very high level review of the enterprise funds. I typically just roll right down to the revenue trend because the expenditures for enterprise funds are primarily driven by capital projects. And the revenue is really kind of what we're most concerned with. And you can see our trend, the 25%, we're tracking that right across the board. Golf is actually ahead of the prior year. But you can see there in about the 2/3 of the way down, the budgeted capital projects for this year, 12.9 million for water, 5.9 million for sewer, $1.7 million for storm. We have about $20 million in capital projects budgeted currently for the enterprise funds. So I'm going to go back to some of my original comments. Revenues are doing well for the general fund, the tax revenues. Revenues are tracking with the enterprise funds, but we've got this dynamic occurring with potential commodity prices. Everyone's heard about construction prices, a lot of other materials that are utilized in the water repairs and projects, fiberglass, things of that nature are really very unstable at this point in time. And then plus everyone's heard about the labor market and how it's difficult finding labor for all kinds of industries. And this has the potential of driving our prices, our costs up. So with $61 million in overall projects for the city, that's something we're really going to have to try to watch. So that concludes, like I said, this is very early in the year. It's a quarter through, but a lot of our revenues, we only have one month revenue of sales tax. So just kind of a high level, directional message for you. So I'll pause at this point and see if there's any questions.
Okay. Any questions from council members? Okay, Councilmember Matthew.
Scott, I love these presentations because there's so much information in them, and digest and see where we're going and be able to see it every month. It makes it a lot easier as a council to understand. So thank you for these. All I wanted to add was that for the hotel impacts, it's also Ferraro as well, because I've had at least 4 different Italian resident or visitors who are here in town for that plant come into my store. And so and they're all staying in hotels right now as well. So they said that their entire crew and they're buying, well, they're in town too as well. So it's not underestimate that one as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Okay. Thank you very much, Scott. Great presentation. Okay. Next item on the agenda is City Manager Gleason's discussion.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I do have a handful of comments tonight. I'm going to follow Phil's lead on the slides. First slide, oh honey, it's First Friday, September 3rd, downtown 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Hopefully we'll continue to have good weather and dry. Next slide. Saturdays on the Square. This has been very successful, and very much appreciate the partnerships that we've developed, and already a call from the community to do even more. So that planning and conversations are going into preparations for FY, well, not FY, but calendar year 22. Next slide. Tour to Chocolate. We mentioned this last time, where we've incorporated a memory to two former mayors that have passed away, Mayor Judy Markowitz and Mayor Buchanan. But this Tour to Chocolate was rescheduled, and it's September 17th, downtown, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Next slide. Welcoming Week. This occurs September 10th through the 19th, 2021. And so that'll be coming up in a couple of weeks. And I believe under aldermanic comments, Alderwoman Bolin will have some additional comments about this and some of the things that we're doing as a partnership with the city. Next slide. This one, I think, hopefully, Chief, you've got a badge because your grandson deserves it. You're probably, go ahead and stand up, please, along with your wife and your grandson. Grandson is Tyler David. Probably should have done this under recognitions, and I apologize for that. But Greg has announced his retirement. It's effective September 3rd. He started with the department in 1996, has held many different positions with the department, but for the last handful of years has held assistant chief position, and has helped me, the community, the department out under two different circumstances, serving as the interim police chief. So Greg, very appreciative to you, and if you do want to step to the podium, I don't mind you introducing your grandson and wife, and if you have any additional comments, I think you should.
I got the right button. It was perfect timing for that to go off. It's been an honor to serve. I've enjoyed serving the residents of Bloomington, Normal, and McLean County through the different roles that I've had the privilege to hold. Most honorable is the opportunity I've had. I apologize. To serve the men and women of the Bloomington Police Department. These are outstanding men and women. I don't stand here because of anything I've done myself. 32 years ago plus, my wife Trina, I lost her, told me I'm not going to marry a cop. Little did we both know at that time that God had other plans for me. She stuck by my side every step of the way. My daughter, who couldn't be here, as well. The success I've had in the department is solely due to the men and women of the police department. They are fantastic. This job is not easy, but it's easier because you have a police department that is willing to step to the task and shoulder the burden day in and day out. These men and women will continue to serve and make you proud as you go forward. Thank you for the opportunity.
Great job, Chief. Phil, do I have any more slides? All right, just a couple of additional comments. I think everybody's seen the census results for the city, the town, McLean County. We actually grew a little bit more than 2,000 in population over a 10-year period. So the growth is something that we're actually very excited about. We went from 76,610 to 78,680. Next item, I wanted to share that the presentation, the Public Works presentation follow-up and Alderwoman Ward's council initiative follow-up, those will come before council on September 13th. There's a fair amount of work, a fair amount of things still yet to be researched and considered, but for the community, both those topics will come back on September 13th. Something else to share, and while I do not have the name, I will share that a offer has been extended to a police chief finalist, and working with him today on finalizing what that would look like. Hope to have a press release in the next couple of days. So thank you, Mayor and Council.
Sorry. Thank you, City Manager Gleason. And again, I want to congratulate Chief Scott on his retirement. I know you stepped up under very difficult circumstances, and you provided that leadership and calm that we needed throughout a very challenging time. So we definitely appreciate it. Thank you very much. And we should also thank your wife for standing by your side all these years, because I know it's not a very easy job to do. And oftentimes we have somebody by our side who supports us doing the things that we need to do. So thank you both very much. The other thing that I wanted to mention is I know we talked about Councilmember Carrillo stepping down from her position. We are in the process of looking at different candidates, and I'm hoping at this moment, I do know that the staff is working on setting up interviews for all of the applicants. So my hope, if the schedule works out, that we'll be able to interview all of those applicants by the end of the week, and then go from there. And there may be some additional follow-up that we'll have to do. But eventually, the ideal situation would be for me to be able to forward a name to the council members by the first meeting in September, so September 13th. So lots of big things happening on September 13th. So barring any other unforeseen circumstances, but that's the hope, and that's what I'd like to be able to get done by then. I think that's it. So sure, go ahead.
What I asked is, the mayor, let me say one more thing that I forgot to mention, COVID and the Delta variant. We had both the Wesleyan students and the ISU students return. Just want to share real quick, we have excellent communication with both universities. I know Presidents Kinsey and Nugent are working very closely with one another, along with the city, town, and the county. So we definitely have our eyes on the return of the student population. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. And now that you mentioned that, I should also add that particularly when it comes to ISU, the numbers in terms of vaccination rates are pretty high, I would say. The thing that a lot of people were worried about, there's less worry there, and we're hoping that the rates of vaccination will continue to increase as we move along. So, okay, council members, any comments, discussions? Sure. Okay, Councilman Ward.
Yeah, I would just echo my hopes that people will get vaccinated. I am so proud of Illinois Wesleyan students who are in my ward for their willingness to care for their fellow human beings, and not only care for themselves, but for each other and all of us. So please get vaccinated.
Thank you, Councilmember Ward. Councilmember Matthew.
Thanks, Mayor. Chief Scott, thank you. Appreciate all the advice over the years and all answering, willingness to answer my questions. Really appreciate that. And thank you for everything that you've done. Jen, thank you for stepping up and getting it done. I know we didn't always agree on every topic, but we'll always appreciate your willingness to answer questions. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to point out that, you know, I made it to the most recent concert on the square. Amazing time. I think it was a great way it was amazing to see everybody turn out. People were spread out with their chairs and just sitting and listening to some awesome bluegrass music. And it was a great time. Looking forward to the next one. So thank you to all staff members who were able to make that happen.
Thank you. Councilmember Emig.
Thank you. Chief Scott, thank you so much for your service. It's been an honor to work with you. And Alderwoman Carrillo, thank you for being such an important voice in this body. I really appreciate it. And just to echo what Alderwoman Ward said, the FDA has now approved the vaccination. All the more reason. Please spread the word. And if you're not sure, talk to your doctor.
Thank you, Councilmember Boland.
Yeah, I want to thanks Chief Scott for his service also. I have enjoyed working with you one-on-one, and I appreciate all the information that you have given me about the police department. I'll miss you. And back to Welcoming Week for Welcoming America. There's a coalition of groups in this community that have been working diligently with the immigrant community. And we are going to be having what I'm calling a celebration at both farmers markets. We have a booth, we're going to have a booth set up on the 11th and the 18th. And representatives from those coalitions will be present. And I hope to make this program and process well-known throughout the community. So.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes, Chief Scott, you took your time to speak with me when I was a candidate for this position. I hadn't even won yet, and really helped me understand, you know, the fine police department we have. And so I thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Also to my colleague, Councilwoman Carrillo, I will miss you, and I appreciate your passion for this city, and I wish you all success in the future.
Sorry, having so much fun. I was distracted for a second. Councilmember Crable.
Thank you, Mayor, and also thank you to Chief Scott for your service. I wanted to make a couple of comments. One of the things that I noted in one of the agenda items when we were talking, it was a crossing guard agenda, we referred to, in some sense, citizens versus residents. And I think this falls in line with the Welcoming America when we talk about things to refer to residents. And I received a very nice response from Chief Scott saying that that was an oversight. So I appreciate that. Second thing, just the great work that all staff is doing. I sent a comment about asphalt, the asphalt project, and what kind of environmental things could we do. And they were saying, hey, yeah, we use 10% reclaimed asphalt pavement that doesn't go into the landfill. We did look at other things that I had showed them, but it just doesn't work. So I always appreciate them looking at those things. And I'll just, this is hard for me. I'm very happy for Alderman Carrillo and her new place, beautiful home. But I just remember, you've been a mentor, a thought partner, a friend. I just, getting the most votes ever, I think, in Ward 6. You told people what you were going to do. You did it. And any issue that came up, you would ask questions to make sure we were all considering those folks that are often ignored or marginalized. And I'll continue as best I can that fight, whether it's for Eastgate residents on confined sewers or immigrants, people of color. So thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least,
Thank
to invite us to her housewarming party.
Yes. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the kind words from everybody. Have really appreciated the experience of getting to work with you. I wrote myself a note so that I didn't get off topic. So, as you know, the circumstances under which this is happening are not ideal. I was displaced from my apartment by my landlord with little notice, and I looked for a place in Ward 6, but was not able to find a place. So the two issues that I want to lift up, I think, with this last public platform is one, highlighting what many folks have said over public comment and on social media, that our current residency requirements for serving on the city council really stack the deck against marginalized people and limit their access to power, not intentionally, but that is the case. So it makes sense that we want elected officials who reside in the places they represent, of course. But the rules around residency and holding office presume a level of housing stability that only homeowners of a pretty high socioeconomic status are afforded. Tenants have always been a small minority on the city council, and with my departure, I believe they will be completely devoid of direct representation. Low-income people, who are almost certainly tenants, have always face tremendous barriers in seeking elected office. And if a tenant candidate does manage to win their race, then the salary offered for their service forces them to juggle the responsibilities of their role alongside 1 or 2 additional jobs and family care. And then even if we do manage this miraculous feat of juggling all the things, then we can be displaced from our homes and easily lose the seat that we fought so hard for. So happily for me, the story ends with a big blue house that you're all invited to and that I could not be happier about. But the injustice in how I got there shouldn't be lost on us. So if we truly value diverse representation from people of all walks of life, identities, and backgrounds, like we say we do, then these barriers have to be removed, and we have to make it so that representing your community is not a privilege reserved only for those who can afford it or who have the housing stability to make it happen. So that's point one. The second is, the issue of my successor. I had a lot to say on this topic, but Ms. Janae Clark Richards, who's not here anymore, but said a whole lot of it during public comments. So I'll mostly echo what she said. Last year, when there was a vacancy created by Councilmember Black's resignation, the former mayor worked closely with Scott and appointed Councilmember Ward based on the recommendation. I have not been invited to be a part of a process, but I do hope that the process is intentional and is constructed in a way that honors the choice that has already been made by Ward 6 residents. Ward 6 had a choice on April 2nd of 2019, and they, the experts in their own lives, chose me to represent them, not in spite of, but because of the controversial opinions that I have on racial and wealth equity, on LGBTQIA issues, on police accountability. So they know what's good for them, and they deserve to have those wishes honored by this council. So to my colleagues, your duty isn't to pick somebody that you're gonna like better than me. Your duty is to find a replacement for the person that Ward 6 democratically elected. And I think that means that you should appoint the person whose identity, position, and experiences most closely resemble those of the person that they already elected. So Ward 6 is watching and is counting on you to do the right thing. So I urge you to please take this duty very, very seriously, as I will not be here to be a part of the process. Thank you again for the plaque and for the kind words. It has not been an easy past 2 years, but I have learned a whole lot, and I'm ready for the next chapter in my life as a home improvement dad. So thank you for the opportunity to serve the community, and yeah, I'll be around. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda should have been an executive session, but I'm sure all of you got the communication that that particular item is canceled. So we will reconvene on September 13th for that item. And next is a motion to adjourn.
I will make that motion.
Okay, Councilmember Bolin and second by Councilmember Carrillo. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. We are adjourned.